What's going on, guys? Rob from Heroes Avenue, and in this video I want to talk about some of the small details in Aquaman that you might have missed. And this goes without saying, but there are going to be spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen Aquaman yet, I'm not sure what you're doing. You need to click off this video, go watch that movie, and join in on the conversation later. So one more thing before we get started on this list, I'm pulling a lot of these things from a Screen Rant article by Andrew Dice, so check that out if you want to see more. But let's get started on this list. So first thing, or Easter egg, I want to reference is a Wonder Woman Easter egg, and it takes place in the mid-credits scene. You see Black Manta. He is floating along in the open sea, and he is found by one Dr. Shin, an Aquaman character in the comics, who might play a potential unintentional villain role. And you see Dr. Shin find him. He heals Black Manta up. He wakes up and he asks him to take him to Atlantis. And Black Manta says, "Sure, if you help me find him." He throws a knife and it lands on a board with an article referencing Aquaman, and under that you see a newspaper clipping that says Wonder Woman nixes Aquaman dating rumors, and that's just a reference to the bigger DCEU. I'm not sure what a lot of YouTubers these days are thinking. Some YouTubers keep talking about how this is a contained universe, this Aquaman universe, when they reference the DCEU a few times in this movie, this being one of them. So I thought that was cool because Zack Snyder even said that with this Aquaman movie, there is bound to be a crossover with Wonder Woman. Jason Momoa has said it himself. He would love to see a potential Aquaman sequel include Wonder Woman and The Flash, because he loves Ezra Miller so much. So it would be really cool to see these two characters cross over in the future, especially because there's precedent for that in the comics, there's precedent for it in the movies. It just is bound to happen. So I love that there is a reference to Aquaman here. And the next thing on this list is also a reference to another or the wider DCEU, and it is a reference to the Green Lantern. So the Green Lantern, there's a lot of Green Lanterns, but in particular Hal Jordan, because in this same mid-credit scene there is another newspaper clipping that says the daily news for Coast City. So, and Coast City, of course, is the home of Hal Jordan. So while we have not yet seen Hal Jordan in the DCEU, we have gotten references to Green Lanterns in Justice League with the battle scene monologue when Diana is talking about the history of the mother boxes. So that was pretty cool. I would love to see Hal Jordan in the future. We do know that one of the plans for a Green Lantern movie in the future does include a Hal Jordan and a John Stewart Green Lantern cop movie, buddy cop movie. So hopefully that takes place in the future. Number 3, we have an Edgar Wright Easter egg, Edgar Wright being another great director, and this is an Easter egg between James Wan and Edgar Wright personally. So let me go ahead and read you James Wan's quote. "Let me tell you this, 2 years ago, Edgar Wright tweeted me that if you can get Stingray in there somewhere, I'm gonna give you an Oscar." He said that to me, so guess what I did in this film? I put Stingray in there. So I'm waiting for Edgar to see the film, reminding him of his tweet. It's a fun inside joke with Edgar that's more of an Easter egg between him and I. And Stingray's some 1960s show that I'm not really familiar of, but you see this particular scene in the opening sequences of Aquaman where Queen Atlanta wakes up and she is befuddled, and she grabs her trident or quindent and throws it at the TV where it is playing Stingray. So it's funny because Edgar Wright actually acknowledges this in one of his tweets. He goes, at Edgar Wright says, "I have not yet seen at Aquaman movie yet, but as I understand, at Creepy Puppet, James Wan made good on his bet, and now I owe him an Oscar. CC at the Academy, help me out please." And that's really funny. That's cool to see this banter between directors, and it's cool to see the little details that the directors put in from their personal lives into their movies. I thought that was really awesome. Number 4, going back to references to the wider DCEU, there is a non-verbal reference to mother boxes apparently. I actually missed this, so I need to keep an eye out for this on my 3rd viewing of this movie, but it looks like Queen Atlanta was familiar with mother boxes, because when he was telling Arthur the story of the king who will bridge the gap between 2 worlds, it looks like there was a little box craft of a box that was shaped like a mother box. Obviously mother boxes are just shaped like a box, but there was some details in there that made it distinctly a mother box to people. So I need to check that out. I didn't catch that reference on my 2 viewings, so I'm gonna make sure to be on the lookout for that on my 3rd viewing. Number 5, there is a possible Man of Steel reference with a collapsing oil rig. So in the scene where King Orm has Arthur in chains and he's explaining to Arthur why the surface world needs to be tamed, why he needs to attack the surface world, and he talks about all the atrocities the surface world is doing on their seas, on their home. You see a collapsing oil rig, and if you've watched Man of Steel, you know there is an oil rig in the beginning of that movie. Kal-El saves those workers, and he falls into the sea. So you see that collapsing oil rig in one of the little montages that King Orm, during King Orm's speech, and that is a possible reference to Man of Steel. Similarly, Jason Momoa and a lot of other people subscribe to the fact that that Aquaman is the person that helped save Kal-El from drowning underwater there. So there's a cool reference to Man of Steel, my favorite superhero movie of all time. Let's go to number 6. There is an Annabelle doll in this movie. So James Wan, of course, being one of the creators of Conjuring, the Annabelle doll is obviously from that universe, and it is in the scene where Arthur and Mira go to pick up her vehicle in that container, and you see a bunch of rotting fish. That's the whole scene where Arthur smells his armpit. That part felt totally out of place to me, but apparently there's an Annabelle doll in there, and I didn't see that on my 2 viewings, so I'm gonna make sure to check that out on my 3rd viewing once more. Number 7, that octopus that was playing the drums, yes, that octopus that everyone was complaining about, is actually from the comics. That's Topo, one of Aquaman's friends from the comics. Dates back all the way to 1965, and James Wan actually had a few ideas in mind for adding Topo in the movie before he finally settled on Topo playing the drums during that battle sequence. I personally didn't have a problem with it. A lot of people are making a big deal out of this. Again, this is one of those things that other movies can get away with without getting much criticism, but because it's the DC universe, I do feel like that this universe gets even more criticism from all the critics and fans in general. So there is Topo. He's from the comics. Whether you like that scene or not, it's a cool little Easter egg to this longtime Aquaman character. Number 8, Aquaman riding a seahorse. Yes, this is that famous meme a lot of people make fun of Aquaman about, riding that seahorse, using his telepathic power. The only thing is, in the Aquaman movie, they made it pretty badass, actually, in my opinion. Some people may find it silly. I thought Aquaman riding the seahorse in this movie was so badass. This, of course, the seahorse actually is in the movie several times. A lot of different characters ride a seahorse, but in particular, when Aquaman is riding that seahorse all the way up to the surface to bait King Orm into a fight, that was absolutely badass. But this actually is from the Super Friends, and it has become a famous meme. So that is another reference to the bigger Aquaman, the Aquaman perception. So that was pretty cool. Number 9, I thought this was really interesting. Orm actually fits the description of the traditional Aquaman perfectly. As a matter of fact, if you look at Aquaman and Orm, they are actually mirror images of each other, of what they're supposed to be. So Aquaman traditionally is a white guy with blonde hair, blue eyes, and his brother Orm, as depicted in the comics, is the one with darker hair, darker complexion, and it's something that the character or the actor who plays Orm, Patrick Wilson, has acknowledged, and he acknowledged that James Wan kind of finds it, uses this as a tongue-in-cheek joke for audiences, so that was pretty cool as well. Number 10, Mary Poppins, or Julie Andrews, the actor who plays the original Mary Poppins, plays the Karathan in this movie. Funny enough, Mary Poppins dropped the same weekend as Aquaman did, and she did not make an appearance in Mary Poppins Returns, but she does make an appearance as the voice of the Karathan in this Aquaman movie. Something that a lot of people, I don't imagine, would pick up, and I only noticed it because I had read an article that she was going to play some sort of role in this movie. So, cool little Easter egg. Mary Poppins is in this movie. Number 11, Gimli is the Brine King. Yes, Gimli from Lord of the Rings. If you guys remember Lord of the Rings, I love fantasy movies, and it was cool to see that this epic fantasy movie of Aquaman took a character from one of my favorite fantasy movies, Lord of the Rings, and put him into this movie. Of course, the actor's name is John Rhys Davies. I think I'm saying that right. The minute I heard the Brine King's voice in the movie, I knew that was Gimli. Just one of those voices you'd never forget, and that's a cool little Easter egg right there. I picked up on it. I'm not sure if other people did, but I think because I've watched Lord of the Rings a million times, I knew it right away. So James Wan has said in interviews that he has taken inspiration from Spielberg and George Lucas for this for this movie, and you get a sense of that with the Indiana Jones and Star Wars feel in this movie. But apparently, in the chase scene where Orm's henchmen and Orm himself are chasing after Mera and Arthur in their ship, apparently you hear an engine stalling that's similar to a plane stalling in Indiana Jones and the Millennium Falcon stalling in Star Wars. Not something I picked up, even though I love those movies, especially Star Wars. I've watched it hundreds of times. But that's something I didn't pick up. So again, one of those things I'm going to be looking for on my next viewing of this movie. Number 13, Michael Beach, the character or actor who played Black Manta's father in the movie, actually has played DC characters before in the animated world. He played Mr. Terrific, as well as Devil Ray, who is essentially Black Manta in Justice League Unlimited, the TV series. But because of rights issues, they had to change up the look and change up the name into Devil Ray in that series. But it's a cool thing to see that he went from the animated world and actually jumped into the movies. So that was a cool little Easter egg, something I never would have picked up unless I read this article, so that was pretty cool. Djimon Hounsou, I think that's how you say his name. For this number 14 one, we're talking about Djimon Hounsou and his role as two characters in the DCEU. Of course, he's going to be the Wizard Shazam in the upcoming Shazam movie. Super excited for that movie. And he's also the Fisherman King, who meets a really tragic ending in this movie. And it was such a minor role, but you definitely recognize his voice if you know this actor. He also has been in Marvel movies as well. He is going to be in the upcoming Captain Marvel movie, and he was in Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 15, Earth's Core. So Dinosaur Island is a place in the DC Comics universe, and apparently is possibly a reference also to Jules Verne, who's quoted in this movie a couple times, and it may reference Jules Verne's journey to the center of the Earth. That was a cool aspect. Definitely, I've seen the Dinosaur Island in the comics before, and it was definitely strange to see that in this movie. It's kind of one of those things that you kind of breeze by really quick in this movie. You you start to see these dinosaurs running around, and immediately your focus shifts to Queen Atlanta coming back. So you kind of forget that while you're watching the movie, but it's a really cool reference to see. Number 16, Merc. We get Merc in this movie. He's not a character who I initially pegged to be Merc, because Merc in the comics actually looks physically different. He is a more brooding character. I would never imagine Lynn Lundy, I think is his name. I never would have imagined him to be Merc, but apparently he is, and you do see the scar on his face, and with his arm being chopped off, he definitely looks a little bit more like the comics, so hopefully we see more of him in the future. I think the biggest scene he had was the chase sequence between him and Mera, and I didn't realize it was Merc until King Orm actually called out his name in the movie. Number 17, the Aquaman trident pose, where his eyes go between the two sides of the trident. I thought that was super badass look. And it's taken from the comics, from multiple comics. There's been that famous pose, and most recently it's been taken from Aquaman number 30. So it was a really great trident shot. It's a shot where he places that trident in front of him to control the sea life and kind of harness all of his power. Really beautiful shot in the movie. Number 18, this one is really cool. So in the movie, like I said, they quote Jules Verne. I think, in the beginning and at the end. But the rest of the quote perfectly describes Aquaman's arch nemesis, Black Manta. So let me go ahead and read that for you. So you might recognize this first part. Put two ships in the open sea without wind or tide, and at last they will come together. And if you finish that quote, something we didn't get in the movie, throw two planets into space and they will fall one on the other. Place two enemies in the midst of a crowd and they will inevitably meet. It is fatality, a question of time. That is all. That describes the relationship between Arthur and Black Manta perfectly, because especially Yahya Abdul-Mateen, who plays Black Manta, he's mentioned it himself that Black Manta can pop up anywhere in the DC universe now. You might find him in different movies, wherever Arthur is, wherever Aquaman is, he can pop up because he's that one guy that they're destined to battle till the end of time. Same goes for the comics. You know, it holds true. So that the rest of that Jules Verne quote is really perfect. That is something that's really awesome, how someone recognized that quote and saw that the completion of that quote actually describes Black Manta. That's really awesome. Number 19, Number 19 is the last thing I'm going to talk about. So number 19 is almost a reference to Man of Steel. Some may say it is, some may say it isn't, but you can't deny the similarities. The ending scene, really epic scene, or really epic shot, I should say, when Aquaman talks about how he's the protector of the deep. He's flying up the ocean, and it is very similar to that first shot we ever got of Man of Steel, where Kal-El is starting to fly up for that first time, and you start to see him go what looks like supersonic speeds. He's flying up, and it is literally the same shot but underwater for Aquaman. So he's holding his trident up, and if I put these side by side, you'll know what I'm talking about. Really awesome shot from both Zack Snyder and James Wan. A lot of people are saying that this is kind of an homage to these two directors, for this previous director who's also helped shape this Aquaman universe, and also to Wonder Woman, because when he jumps up, you see this hero shot of Aquaman. It's really beautiful, and it looks exactly like the same slow-mo ending shot from Wonder Woman. So when I first saw that Wonder Woman ending, the end of Wonder Woman and that slow motion shot, I thought it was really out of place. But maybe that's something they're starting to do with all DC movies now. Maybe all of these movies end with a slow motion hero shot of the character, and it makes me love it just that much more. So that is all the similarities. Let me know what you guys thought of these details. Did you miss all of these details like I did for the most part, or did you see these things, and are there more details that I missed in this movie? Let me know in the comments below. Please give this video a like if you can, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.